You might believe that changing your reality requires months, maybe even years of visualizing, working, and healing. That breakthroughs must be earned through struggle. That true alignment only arrives after you've mastered every spiritual method, crossed off every technique, and proven yourself worthy. But what if the real shift, the quantum leap, doesn't take time at all? What if it happens in a moment so subtle, so quiet? Most people overlook it completely. There's a pattern that shows up right before everything changes. It doesn't emerge when you push harder or hustle more. It appears the instant something inside you stops forcing, stops doubting, stops chasing. That's the moment the field finally moves. In this video, we're going to reveal the exact frequency that triggers a quantum shift, why it's hidden in simplicity, and why your ego resists it more than anything else. You'll learn the energetic skill that matters more than strategy, how to recognize the signs you're about to jump timelines, and why your breakdowns aren't failures, they're initiations. Let's start with something you've felt, but may never have named: the fear of ease. That strange tension that appears the moment life begins to flow, and you suddenly panic when you know something deeply within you, yet your mind demands evidence. That's the tug of war between your soul's clarity and your ego's need to survive. We live in a world addicted to struggle. Effort is praised, complexity is worshipped. We've been trained to believe that if something feels easy, it must be wrong. If it comes naturally, it must be unearned. But the quantum field doesn't reward effort. It responds to clarity. It mirrors the purity of your vibration, and clarity almost always lives in simplicity. Simplicity, however, terrifies the false self, because if it really is that simple, then what was all the suffering for? If it's easy, who are you? Without the identity built around fixing, proving, and striving, simplicity dissolves drama. And when the noise fades, there's nowhere left to hide. That's why most people unconsciously sabotage their own awakening, not because they're broken, but because they fear how still the truth actually is. They expect thunder, they meet silence, they crave fireworks, but the field responds with peace. But it's in that stillness that the real shift begins. The quantum field is always mirroring you, not waiting for your next affirmation or technique, but resonating with the vibration you're already broadcasting. And the moment you stop trying to make it happen and simply become, the feedback loop flips. You stop needing proof from the outer world. You stop shrinking or expanding based on what's happening around you. Instead, you hold your tone steady, centered, unwavering. That's the difference between manifesting and shifting. Manifesting often starts from a place of lack, of wanting to bring something in that feels missing. Shifting, however, is recognition. It's the act of stepping into the version of yourself that already exists in another present moment. What stands between you and that version isn't time or effort. It's frequency. It's your energetic filter. So ask yourself, what if your transformation has never been hard, just unfamiliar? What if you've been trying to think your way into a new timeline instead of feeling your way into it? And what if the real block isn't your surroundings, but your attachment to complexity? The belief that growth must always be difficult to be real. In the next part of this video, we're going to explore why so many people can't stabilize their signal, and how subtle blind spots in your awareness create static that the field simply can't translate. You'll learn the hidden ways you unconsciously resist resonance, and how to start broadcasting from a place that the universe can finally respond to clearly. Because this simplicity you've been overlooking, it's not a step backward. It's the gateway. Once you truly feel it, everything shifts. So if the quantum leap is so simple, why do so few ever experience it? Why does it seem like some invisible barrier keeps you circling through the same emotional patterns, even when you know better? Why do your efforts peak and then plateau right before the breakthrough? It's because simplicity demands something far deeper than effort. It asks for awareness, and awareness without complexity to hide behind and feel raw, even terrifying. When things are complicated, You can point to the method, the tool, the timing. When it's simple, there's nowhere to deflect. The light shines inward, and suddenly, you're faced with one question that only you can answer. Am I truly ready to shift? Let's begin there, with what blocks most people from sustaining their true frequency. Blind spots. These aren't flaws. They're patterns hidden in plain sight. Emotional reflexes you've mistaken for personality. Stories you've told yourself so often, they now sound like facts. But here's the truth. The quantum field doesn't respond to your conscious desires. It mirrors your unconscious state. So while your mind may be visualizing abundance, your vibration might still be carrying the imprint of scarcity, not because you're failing, but because you've never questioned your default broadcast. Pause and feel into that. When no one's watching, what frequency are you really transmitting? What emotion hums beneath your words, beneath the effort, beneath the practice? That baseline. The emotional weather of your inner world is your true signal. That's what the field is reading. This is where the first real master begins. Self-awareness, and not the kind that happens in a journal or a reflection ritual, but the kind that happens in the moment. The quiet witnessing of your own thoughts as they unfold. Awareness without judgment. Observation without the urge to fix. It's the ability to notice when your body slips into survival mode, and to stay present instead of collapsing into reaction. The next layer is even deeper. Radical responsibility. This is where your frequency starts to clear. It's not about guilt or blame. It's about ownership. Taking full responsibility for every vibration you emit, even the ones you wish you didn't. When you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this showing me about my resonance? The entire field reorganizes. Victim energy is noisy but scattered. Ownership is quiet, grounded, magnetic. Then comes the skill that stabilizes it all. Accountability states. These are the emotional anchors you return to, no matter what chaos unfolds around you. Most people wait for life to prove that they can relax, but quantum shifters hold their frequency until life reflects it. That's accountability showing up for your chosen state, even when it's uncomfortable, even when logic argues against it, even when nothing visible has shifted yet. And finally, the paradoxical art of detachment from perception. We've been conditioned to label everything. This is good. That is bad. This means progress. That means failure. But what if your lowest point isn't regression at all? What if it's the final contraction before expansion? The breakdown that signals your old frequency, collapsing under the weight of your evolution. Detachment doesn't mean apathy. It doesn't mean numbing out or pretending not to care. It means releasing the need to judge what's happening. It's allowing the experience to move through you raw, unfiltered, without stamping it as good or bad, success or failure. Because the quantum field isn't linear, it doesn't move in straight lines or follow human logic. Sometimes, the deepest darkness is the exact calibration needed for the light to stabilize. You're not just learning to think differently. You're learning to vibrate differently, to hold your frequency steady, even when the evidence hasn't appeared yet. And that requires courage, the kind most people run from. It's easier to keep yourself busy with techniques, affirmations, and spiritual checklists. It's harder to sit in stillness and whisper the truth to yourself. I keep looping because I'm still filtering reality through my old stories. The quantum shift isn't complicated, but it's precise, almost surgical. It slices straight through illusion and shows you where you're still addicted to struggle, where chaos has become your comfort zone. And then it asks the simplest, hardest question. Are you willing to let that version of you finally rest? In the next part, we're going to step right into the heart of this transition. The moment before the leap. That strange, dense tension that builds as your old identity begins to dissolve and your new timeline starts to hum just beyond reach. Most people mistake this phase for failure, but if you know what you're feeling, if you can name it, you'll realize it's the threshold of your breakthrough. This is where the old timeline ends and your true frequency begins. There's a moment subtle, dizzying, almost invisible, that always comes before a real quantum shift. It's the in-between, the space where the old reality is releasing its grip, but the new one hasn't yet rooted. You feel weightless, suspended between worlds. The past no longer fits, but the future isn't formed, and every part of you wants to do something, anything, to escape the uncertainty. But that urge, the test, because this is the edge, the threshold, and though this space is sacred, it rarely feels that way. It arrives disguised as confusion, exhaustion, emotional static, even despair. You may think you've lost your way, that your path has disappeared, that your vision is unraveling instead of unfolding. But what's actually happening is far more powerful. You're standing in the silence between frequencies, and your new reality is moments away from locking in. But here's the truth. This isn't collapse. It's calibration. Before any quantum leap, your energetic field has to release the pattern it's been stabilizing. It's like detuning from one radio frequency before you can lock cleanly onto another. And that in between, that static, is what you're feeling right now. It doesn't mean you're off course. It means your signal is shifting. That static feels like confusion, emotional noise, the sudden urge to run or fix or prove. But none of that is a warning. It's the gateway, because your old vibration can't sustain the next level you're stepping into. So yes, it may look like things are unraveling, but what's actually happening is that the energetic scaffolding that held your old identity in place is coming apart. Beliefs, habits, and emotional circuits that once defined you are losing their charge. And as they do, your ego starts to panic. It scrambles to regain control, creating fear, doubt, and restlessness. Not because you're wrong, but because the ego doesn't know how to exist without the familiar noise. It's not sabotage, it's survival instinct. And this moment right before the jump is where most people turn back. Not because the universe denied them, but because they misread the turbulence. They mistake the friction of transformation for the friction of failure. So if everything feels uncertain, if your emotions are unsteady, if your life feels like static, that's not collapse. That's confirmation. It means you're close. What's really happening is that your frequency is purging everything that no longer resonates. This is why detachment becomes non-negotiable here if you label this phase too soon. If you call it wrong, stuck, or proof that it's not working, you instantly snap back into the old loop. You restabilize the very frequency you were dissolving. But if you can stay centered not by effort, but by awareness, something begins to soften underneath the chaos. Edges blur, tension releases, and rather than forcing your way forward, you begin to flow forward. That's when magnetism starts to build. Not because you're doing more, but because you've stopped leaking energy through resistance. Right before the shift, your nervous system is learning to hold more power. And that power doesn't come from intensity. It comes from coherence. When you allow yourself to stay present inside uncertainty without labeling it, fixing it, or fighting it, something remarkable happens. Your field begins to organize around your stillness. That's the exact moment the quantum starts to respond. So what do you actually do in that space? Nothing. At least not in the way you've been taught. This isn't the time to hustle, adjust, or analyze. It's the time to tune, breathe into the unease, watch the stories surface. Let the timelines loosen their grip. Your task isn't to manufacture the new reality. It's to make space for it, because the real shift isn't about control. It's about availability. You're not trying to force an outcome. You're relaxing into the frequency that already contains it. Now, let's look closer at how this actually works, how the field reads your signal, and why what you think you're sending may not be what the quantum is actually receiving. We'll also talk about how to refine your resonance so you can finally meet the version of your life that's already waiting in the field. You don't need to push harder. You just need to hold steady, especially when nothing makes sense. Because that's when the portal opens. That's when reality starts to bend. That's when your shift stops being a possibility and becomes inevitable. Let's talk about signals. You've heard the phrase before. The quantum field responds to frequency, not words. But here's what most people overlook. You're always transmitting. Your energy is broadcasting every second, whether you mean to or not. And what it's broadcasting isn't your vision board or your spoken affirmation. It's your embodiment. You can tell the universe you're ready all you want. You can script, visualize, or meditate for hours. But if, underneath all that effort, your signal is threaded with doubt, urgency, fear, or performance, that's the frequency the field mirrors back, because the field doesn't speak human language. It reads resonance. So what does that really mean? It means your inner state is the entire strategy. Your nervous system is the instrument that plays the melody your life dances to, and the note that gets the field's attention, the one that creates the quantum lock, is coherence. Coherence is that grounded harmony between your thoughts, emotions, and energy. It doesn't demand perfection. It asks for presence. Think of it like tuning a radio station. If you're even a fraction off the dial, all you hear is static fragments of a song, pieces of a voice, but never the full signal. That's what happens when your frequency is split between desire and disbelief. When you want, but don't trust. Don't receive. Speak but don't feel. Your field becomes noisy, fragmented, incoherent. And incoherence keeps the signal weak. And when your frequency is fragmented, when your inner and outer signals don't match, the field only has one way to respond: delay. That's why quantum shifting has nothing to do with doing more. It's not about chasing, fixing, or stacking new techniques. It's about clearing the signal. And clearing doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It means aligning them. It means taking full ownership of your energy so completely that there's no gap between what you intend and what you embody. But here's where most people stumble. They try to force coherence. They try to think their way into alignment, to reason their way into trust. They overanalyze in every vibration, dissect every block, micromanage their own expansion, as if it were a task on a checklist. But coherence doesn't come from control. It comes from surrender. You can't fake resonance. You can't logic your way into magnetism. You feel your way there by softening into truth, not by performing it, by relaxing into who you already are instead of striving to become something else. So, what generates real resonance? Clarity, stillness, honesty. The quiet decision to embody what you desire before it arrives, not out of pretending, but out of calm certainty. This is the frequency the quantum field recognizes instantly. I already am. I already hold. I already align. Not because it's visible yet, but because it's real. And that's the moment your field begins to shift, not through force, but through attunement. When your nervous system starts to trust your energy, the signal stabilizes. And once your signal stabilizes, the world reorganizes to match it. So here's your moment of truth. Type it, whisper it, claim it. I am the shift. Let that be your anchor. Not a demand to the universe, but a reminder to yourself. You're not announcing something new. You're recognizing what's always been within you. Say it, not to persuade, but to affirm. Because when you speak from embodiment, the field doesn't just hear you, it harmonizes with you. And when the field harmonizes, reality begins to move. Now, let's decode exactly how that happens. How the field mirrors your internal state. How your attention acts as the selector. How coherence operates as a command. And why F4 is actually the weakest form of power. You'll see soon enough. You don't change reality. You change states. You tune into the version of you who's already living that reality. And that shift, subtle, immediate, irreversible, begins right now. Now that you've felt the essence of coherence, that steady hum of resonance that reorganizes everything, it's time to understand how the quantum field actually responds to you. Because if you've ever asked why some intentions manifest effortlessly, while others seem to linger in limbo, the answer is simple, but rarely understood. The field doesn't respond to wanting. It responds to dominant vibration. And that vibration, your energetic signature, is defined by one thing above all, where your attention consistently lives. Let's unpack this. The quantum field is infinite. Every version of you, every possible life, every outcome already exists within it. Nothing is waiting to be made. Everything is waiting to be noticed. According to the observer effect in quantum physics, particles don't take form until they're observed. The act of focused awareness collapses possibility into matter, which means your attention is not a passive lens. It's a creative force. It determines which version of reality becomes visible. So, the real art of shifting isn't about controlling outcomes. It's about selecting them through sustained focus, and then stabilizing that selection through your state of being. But here's where most people scatter their power. Their attention is fractured. They visualize abundance in the morning, spiral into fear by midday, and fall asleep replaying doubt. That's not alignment. That's interference. The field doesn't punish that. It simply mirrors it. That's why results appear mixed, delayed, inconsistent. But when your attention sharpens, when it becomes clear, calm, unwavering, something extraordinary unfolds. Reality begins to reorganize itself around your frequency, not because you forced it, but because your focus became a gravitational point. People, moments, synchronicities, opportunities all start moving towards you through the natural law of entrainment. Your vibration becomes the anchor. You're not pushing change anymore. You're merging with the version of life that already vibrates where you've arrived. Here's the nuance most miss. You don't shift through thought alone. You shift through identity. Your mind might want a higher timeline, but your subconscious, your emotional baseline, might still be broadcasting the old one. And the field, neutral and precise, mirrors that identity every time. This is where the inner work stops being mechanical and becomes sacred. It's not about fixing, it's about remembering. Each time you return to coherence, not through willpower, but through presence, you're reactivating a version of yourself that was always there, waiting to lead. So ask yourself gently, who am I being right now? Not in words, not in performance, but in energy, in truth, in stillness, because the field is already listening. And it's not responding to what you're saying. It's responding to what you're being, because that version of you, the one already living, the vision you keep reaching for, isn't waiting somewhere in the distance. It's here. It's available right now. And you don't reach it by stretching forward. You meet it by allowing. In this final chapter, we'll bring the journey full circle. You'll learn how to let quantum shifting become effortless, not something you practice, but something you embody. We'll reveal the final key to anchoring your new timeline, so it doesn't flicker in and out like a temporary alignment, but roots itself as your new normal. Stay present. The shift isn't coming. It's unfolding right now. You've seen the pattern. The quantum field doesn't respond to struggle. It responds to stability. It doesn't listen to your words. It mirrors your energy. It doesn't grant you what you chase. It reflects what you consistently are. And the real shift, it was never external. It's always been internal. It's simpler than anyone wants to believe. So simple that the ego resists it, tries to complicate it, because complexity feels safe. Simplicity feels vulnerable. But those who actually shift, the ones who stabilize in new timelines and stay there, they all discover the same truth. The simplicity is the power. It's not a trick. It's the code. The reason most people don't remain in their new reality isn't because they're doing it wrong. It's because they don't stay in the signal long enough for it to solidify. They step into alignment for a moment, feel the current move through them, and then question it, measure it, retreat. But the field doesn't reward intensity. It rewards consistency. So let's make it clear. You don't quantum shift by pushing harder or proving more. You shift by aligning with more precision, more honesty, more calm. You shift when you stop chasing the version of you that already exists and simply start being them. Now, that doesn't mean pretending. It doesn't mean forcing light when you're standing in shadow or smiling through ache. It means allowing every emotion to exist without letting any single one define who you are. That's emotional intelligence. That's energetic maturity. And that's exactly what the quantum responds to. You're not here to chase change. You're here to embody the one who transforms effortlessly. Once that lands, life stops feeling like a race and starts reflecting you with precision. You move differently. Your presence arrives before your words do. You speak less, yet your energy communicates more. You ask less, yet receive more. Not because you've mastered a technique, but because you've remembered your natural harmony with the field itself. This is why true teachers of manifestation rarely hand out formulas. They don't give you steps. They transmit states. They help you remember what's already coded in your being. They don't build you up. They uncover what was always there. And that's what this moment is, an invitation to return to the version of you that has always known how to flow with life instead of forcing it. That timeline already exists. The one where you are calm, clear, magnetic, anchored, not because everything outside you is perfect, but because you've stopped outsourcing your alignment to circumstance. You are the stability now. You are the coherence. So let this be the shift that stays. Let this be the frequency you return to, not as performance, but as home. And if you've made it here, you already know this wasn't just a video. It was a transmission. Something subtle inside you has already begun to rearrange. If you felt it, that quiet recognition, that internal click, then anchor it now. Subscribe not for content, but for continuity, not for information, but for integration, because this isn't a channel. It's a field, a living frequency, and every subscriber is a signal, a declaration to the quantum. I remember who I am. Welcome home. You've always been the shift, and now the field remembers it too.